My guest this episode is the creator of one of the best known Irish music tracks ever. In fact, it holds the lofty position of being in the top 5 best-selling Irish singles of all time. It replaced the national anthem, for God's sake, as the last tune of the night in many's a nightclub up and down the country still to this very day. But there's a lot more to the man they call the Maniac, his pirate radio past and his penchant for expensive suitcases, just to name but a few. This is Mark McCabe.
Did at any stage, regardless of your professional and your personal achievements, did it ever really feel like your whole life was being defined by Maniac?
Yeah.
You must have had that though, because your name is synonymous with that track. Whenever anyone
is,
yeah, exactly.
I mean, in reality, it still is. You know, when you, I can't say when you. I'm talking about me. When a track like that garners the attention and support, and sort of fits itself into almost, you know, popular Irish culture, and then manages to reach, you know, Irish expats all over the world. It's an achievement that, you know, I always say this, I always kind of feel a little bit shy about it because I know what it takes to write a real song.
Yeah.
And to put yourself in a position where you emote on that level. And Maniac doesn't fit any of those stereotypical song structures. It's one of these things that's just of its time, but for whatever reason it just continues to keep on rolling and rolling. So I was always shy about it because I kind of felt embarrassed that I had achieved, and the song had achieved, so much by comparison to what an awful lot of people will spend their entire lives trying to achieve. So I've had a love-hate relationship with the track. I still do. I mean, I love it as much as I hate it. I hate it most of the time, but you put me in a club and you put the crowd there and we put it on and it just goes off. And there's just it would be stupid of me to deny myself the pleasure that I get when I get the admiration from people in a live venue like that. But it would be stupid of me to deny, you know, what people want. And ultimately, it's the people who have made that track what it is.
You sound like a man who's made peace with it to a certain extent.
I have, yeah.
Because I remember kind of reading, I'm not sure if like it was an interview or a direct quote or whatever, but I remember you kind of maybe mid-noughties saying that you'd never perform it again, or that you didn't want anything to do with it. You almost wanted to distance yourself from it.
And I didn't. I mean, I stopped for the guts of 10 years. It just became too much. And you have to remember that this came at a time when, you know, people were still buying singles. The chart still mattered. You know, most people weren't online yet. So it was a completely different structure in order to make something popular. It had to really be popular. It had to really be something as opposed to just being, you know, a little click somewhere that happened to sort of snowball online. This was a time when things were really, really different. And it was that awful time of pop music where it was like the Backstreet Boys and too many bad pop songs to mention. And here was this thing sitting in the middle of it. And that came out of the 90s, you know, rock scene of Oasis and Blur and Radiohead. So people were really kind of uncomfortable with dance music being sort of, you know, popularized like that. And anybody that was into dance music at the time was into, you know, dance music.
Underground kind of thumping stuff. Because you even had like trance anthems that were making the top 40 at the time, you know, like all the Positiva stuff.
Yeah, big time. So, and this just didn't fit within any of those, even though it was a dance record. You know, the dance community certainly weren't standing up and going, wow, this is really good, man. You know, well done.
It wasn't cool enough.
So it certainly wasn't cool enough. But yeah, I drew a line on it and I said, I'm going to move on. And then just the way the world works and the way the world turns, I was offered the opportunity to do it at the Electric Picnic. And I always said that I would do something with it if I felt that the time was right. And I kind of felt the time was right because there had been a little bit of an upsurge. Nicky Byrne had pushed it on a radio show and it went back to number one for 3 hours or something on iTunes. And then I was approached to do the picnic. And I said, look, why not?
Outside of the whole Maniac thing, in terms of your professional life, it's kind of safe to say you've always been involved in music and predominantly radio.
Oh, yeah.
You were part of RTE. Pre that, you were part of the infamous Pulse FM in Dublin, which was quite a seminal station in its time. At what age did that kind of direction begin to appeal to you?
From as way back as I can remember. I remember my dad used to have this amp, and he used to do the local school discos. Like, he wasn't a DJ, but he would always record Top of the Pops for us every Sunday evening. And he would then play those tapes at these school discos, and he had this amp. And I took that amp from him, and I got a speaker, and I remember running a cable up to my sister's bedroom, because we lived in a 3-story house, and she was up on the 3rd floor. So she'd have all her friends over, and I'd run this cable and put this speaker in the room and just play them tunes from downstairs. So, like, as far back as I can remember, I always wanted to do something with music. I wasn't sure exactly what it was, but I was always involved with, like, in school, like lighting or sound or that type of thing. And then I went on to work for a PA company, and eventually started to mix sound for bands and do lighting for fashion shows and stuff like that. So I was always in and around stages. I remember somebody in the place where we worked, because I was young, and I used to kind of just hang out in music shops. And in a way, they kind of gave me a job, but they didn't give me a job. I was just always there.
You were there to lift stuff or to go get stuff from the back store.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember somebody saying to me, "Would you not be out playing football with your friends?" It was a Saturday afternoon. And I was like, no, like, I enjoy this.
Yeah.
And my dad had to write a letter at one point, which said, you know, I give permission for such and such a company to act as guardian for my son, because I was in, like, the Bagot.
What age were you at this stage?
13,
Okay.
12, 13, something like that. So, but I was in, like, the Rock Garden, the Bagot Inn, all of these, like, big venues at a really good time, because there were a lot of bands that were kind of just taking off then. And that whole Irish indie scene was getting really, really big, like Slattery's, places like that, you know. So always, as far as I can remember, I've always been involved with staging or production or something in that shape. And then I kind of got bit with a bug of radio when I got one of those mic transmitters that you can tune to your radio.
Yeah.
So I took it apart and figured out that I could put an input to it, and tried to put an aerial up on the roof of the house and tried to broadcast to my local neighbourhood.
Amazing.
So, and then that just grew from, you know, buying a transmitter and getting involved with pirate radio and just, you know, growing it from there.
Before we jump into the pirate conversation, this is an important question for a DJ, so prepare yourself.
Okay.
Can you remember the first record you bought with your own money?
Oh, wow. I think it was either Mrs. Wood's Joanna or the Bouncer. Do you remember the Bouncer?
I do.
Your name's not down, you're not coming in.
Of course, yeah.
I think it was one of those two.
Okay, I can remember mine. I can vividly remember it. It was Bobby Brown's On Our Own.
Oh, wow.
And I bought it because it was in Ghostbusters 2.
Okay.
And the Ghostbusters were on the sleeve. And so as a result, I loved the song. But I can remember far back, like, my dad copying tapes and stuff, and it was like Michael Jackson's Bad and the Best of Wham were kind of my tapes.
Okay.
Same way, like, the Karate Kid and Back to the Future were my films. But the first, I remember my 7-inch vinyl in a shop in Wexford. It's not there anymore. I can't even remember what it was called. It was across the road in Pennies. But you used to walk in, it was real old school. They had, like, all the 7 inches of the charts up on the wall in order.
Oh, yeah.
So, and I just remember seeing the Ghostbusters thing on it. And the colour of the single was yellow and the colour of the album was blue.
Wow.
But I was too young to be bought the album or to afford it. And somehow out of my pocket money, I managed to buy this Bobby Brown thing. But the Bouncer kind of trumps that in terms of cool factor.
Yeah,
Bobby Brown was cool in the 80s, but
Yeah.
the Bouncer is kind of cooler, you know
And
what I mean?
Mrs. Wood's Joanna, you know.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And that was, like, again, that was a time when, you know, you couldn't just download a track. You had to physically get yourself out of wherever you were and go and find it, and then hope that they had it in stock. And I remember bringing it back, and I had heard Mrs. Wood's Joanna in particular so many times on Sunset and Club FM, I think. And it was just weird to actually have my own copy that I could kind of go back to the beginning. And that's how it actually starts, because you never actually heard how it started, because they would always mix it with something else.
Of course, yeah.
You know, so
Speaking of, we mentioned, like, the whole pirate radio scene, Pulse. How did you become involved in that? You said that you set up your own transmitter and tried to broadcast to your local area. So how does one go from that to being a part of one of the most important Dublin pirates ever?
Well, there was a guy called Connor G who
Holding court in the background.
holding
here,
court in the
lads.
background here. Connor brought me out. I always wanted to see Pulse. I always wanted to see the station, and Connor had been working there, so he brought me out one day. I think that's what happened, wasn't it? You brought me out there, and I met the two guys, Ronan and Dara. I met Ronan first, and I was running a station in Wexford during the summer, because myself and Connor had been running a station in Wexford. and they gave us the jingles from the Dublin station. So we had Pulse FM in Wexford. And
what year was this?
oh wow, that would be what, 94, 95 or something like that.
I vaguely remember that. Because like obviously I'm from Wexford town.
Yeah.
I remember like Kiss FM in town being a thing. And were you running it from like North Wexford, from Courtown area, or where?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know. We have no idea how far we actually got out because it was pretty much just for us and the population of Dublin that moved to
That descended upon
to
Courtown in the summer
Castletown. Well,
months.
it was Castletown, but we were
Okay.
in this. I mean, we had a huge mast, massive mast, because the house that we were staying in, that we were given for the summer, which was really weird, had leather doors and
What?
yeah, and loads of underwear in bags upstairs.
That sounds like a serial killer's gaff.
It was really, really weird.
I think you were given it as a patsy and the cops were going to raid it at some stage and like you
Yeah.
were responsible for something.
We just did it for the local community. There was probably about 300 Dublin people who descended on Castletown and still do, and we just we did it for them. And I guess after that, I came back up because the summer ended and everybody went home, as you do, and I just started to hang out with them a little bit more, and then kind of got more and more involved and used to stay there until stupid o'clock in the morning, just doing stupid things like I'd see cables running and I'd be like, you know what, you should really replace that cable. You know, if you
were the
really want
nag.
this to be, it was a huge nag. I mean, I nagged them to the point where we moved out of a shed into a commercial premises, bought an Optimod, which was like, for a pirate in the 90s, it was just like unheard of.
The Holy Grail.
It was a really expensive bit of kit. Nagged them to death. And they did. And it paid off ultimately because they kind of left the airwaves as one of the last great big pirates, you know.
And it left such a legacy as well, but we'll talk about that in a minute. It was, of course, a very different time. We spoke about it, like it was pre-internet. This was kind of where a lot of people got their dance music fix from. I was once told a famous story, right, that if you had a Pulse FM jacket, you could walk into any teenage disco or nightclub in the Dublin County area, and it was like a golden ticket for the shift.
Pretty much.
That you could walk in and that a mob of young ones would descend upon it. So I want to know, can you confirm or deny? So that is the truth.
That was the truth, yeah. I mean, there was T-shirts as well.
So there was a hierarchy of the T-shirt and the jacket.
Hierarchy, but we all had the jackets and we all thought we were the bomb. And my jacket is actually, I know where it is. A friend of mine has
it's in the car. What are you lying for? You're going to wear it tonight.
No, I mean, it was one of those times where people had just got a little bit bored with what was happening on commercial radio in Dublin. It was like Rock 104, 98 was still probably 98 and so on, and it was Capital FM or Radio Ireland or whatever they were at the time. So Pulse just offered commercial dance music. That's all it did. And a little bit of R&B during the morning. But otherwise, you know, as the day went on, it got progressively harder. And we were living it. Like, it was entirely us. When we got up in the morning, it was the music we listened to. We would get compilations from being on holiday or things like that, and people would bring in and they'd play the track. Everybody would copy it. They would then go out and play those tracks all over the place. Like, people like Tony Fenton were ringing us.
Wow.
And going, hey, it's Tony. Hey, guys, you know, just let you know you're sounding great. And we were like, wow. You know, so, I mean, it was really, it landed at the right time, just in terms of people getting over that kind of indie rock explosion that happened in the mid to late 90s, and then the sort of dance boom that happened from 2000 onwards.
In terms of Pirates, like we said, it's always cast as one of the more important ones because of the influence it had at the time and also the money it made. Wasn't there an independent report afterwards where it was kind of put on a par with the likes of 98 and stuff in terms of being known and money-wise and things? But the legacy that it left and the platform that it gave to so many people like yourself, to Connor, who else was there that's kind of still around? Darrow D, Al Gibbs.
Damien McCall, Steve Cooper was involved. Jenny Green. Oh man!
A couple of the lads who founded Christmas FM were involved in it as well.
Darrow was one of the owners, so yeah, and he set up Christmas FM. Garvin Rigby, who did the Zoo Crew. Yeah, I mean, pretty much anybody who was on air there went on and had a career somewhere in terms of radio.
Seeing as it was so successful, how did it actually come to an end? Was it raided or what was the story?
No, we went off air on the 30th of June 1999, I think. And we went off under the illusion that
you would get a legal license.
We would get a legal license. Well, that wasn't, exactly said. It was more a case of, look, in order for you to apply for this license, you're going to have to cease transmission. So we went off air, and a conglomerate was formed, which had The Edge was involved with one of the submissions.
There's always a rock star somewhere. Bob Geldof loves sticking his oar into these things as well, doesn't he?
Yeah. The late great John Reynolds was involved. Paul McGuinness was involved with our consortium.
He was involved in the original Beat consortium as well. He was
Paul McGuinness? Was he? Yeah.
He was a co-owner in the early days.
Yeah. So, there was a bunch of guys who had an interest, and they obviously saw that there was a market for this. So, I've stated on a number of occasions, Pulse was the reason that we have Beat, that we have Spin, that we have Spin Southwest, that we have iRadio, because we proved that it was economically viable to run a youth station in this country. And it was a real disappointment when we didn't get the license, because we had a pretty strong application going in, but Dennis O'Brien is Dennis O'Brien. And
so I'm assuming it was the license that Spin eventually won, is that correct?
Yeah. So, we were all pretty gutted, but a lot of us had, at that point, I had already got a call from 2FM, from RTE. John Power was already there, so he was kind of, flying the flag for me and Connor and for a couple of others. I went to 104, Jenny went to 104. So, we all were kind of like, it was bittersweet.
Yeah, but it wasn't the end of the world. You still had something to go. How many of you actually went to RTE?
There was Damien, me, Connor, John, Jenny, Al McQuillan.
There's still quite a lot to come from one pirate.
Yeah,
that's, to the national broadcaster.
Yeah.
It's a huge number. We keep talking about the legacy of Pulse. Moving on to the RTE days, like the 6 to 6 things on 2FM, that era was hugely influential. Even to myself, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing if it wasn't for that. Well, like pure non-commercial dance music from 6 p.m. on a Saturday evening to 6 a.m. Sunday morning. Do you look back now and surprised that all of you were allowed such freedom and control on the national broadcasting airwaves?
If you only knew.
Well, I know some of it. I was present with some of it. I was young,
man. But like to be in there doing that, was just like wow. We just like you couldn't. For us, it was just heaven. Because we had the run of the place from 6 o'clock on a Saturday to 6 o'clock on a Sunday. And any time there was a big event like Creamfields or Homelands or Gate Crash or anything like that, we'd always bail back to the studio and do an after session.
I remember listening to Power one like Sunday morning after Creamfields. We were on the drive back and Power had lost his voice.
Yeah,
I remember that, and it was just like
his mind.
And we were sitting at a petrol station in Dolphin's Barn trying to get fags and bottles of water and chewing gum. Do you know what I mean? It was one of those situations. Yeah. I told you this story lately. Like I personally have 2 memories of my early involvement in radio before I started doing it professionally. The first was I did a summer on Kiss FM, the Pat O'Keefe owned edition of it, from the basement of Ballymun Cabs at the top of O'Connell Street. Jay Pigeon gave me the gig because I won obviously the Creamfields 2001 thing via yourselves with 2FM. So I got the half-hour afternoon slot, and then Jay, I met him a month later, and he was like, "Do you want to do a summer?" I was like, "Yeah." So some of the memories of that are like I was on a Monday afternoon and going up and discovering that like a load of junkies had robbed the decks, and that we said, do you remember Fabio? Fabio's still on the go. Yeah. Fabio running around trying to find out who had the decks and where they were and stuff like that, and putting up masts on our transmitter aerials on like a building in Capel Street. At all hours of the evening. You're just like, I should be at home studying for me leaving. Do you know what I mean? I think I'd done my leaving at that stage. But my other early radio story, and this is the one I told you, like when we met up last summer for the first time in years, was that I remember coming in to do an edition of the Firing Squad with Mr. Spring, Timmy Hannigan, and I'll never forget this. Like you used to do, wasn't it a kind of a charge show between 6 and 8? It was sponsored by Abbey Discs.
No. We just
made that up then.
Yeah, no, we didn't. It was in the sense that Billy was, forever
supplying the tunes, or getting stuff in next Tuesday.
Yeah. No, we were really lucky in that sense that he knew the power that we had as such, being on the national broadcaster.
So if you were playing it, people would be in to buy it, basically.
So he'd get one copy and he'd sell 100. That would kind of be the way he would see it, which was great for us.
So it was unofficially sponsored in a way.
Yeah.
But I remember walking in one evening, and I remember you sitting there with a baseball cap on, fag in your hand, the same hand on the fader, putting it up to talk on the mic. And I remember just stopping and thinking and going, that looks cool as fuck. Okay. And I don't even smoke. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you used to be able to smoke in the studio.
Yeah.
So Yeah, I mean, it was a golden age of radio. Yeah, it was like, I mean, ultimately it was all down to Timmy and Ian Wilson. You know, they were the two that kind of recognised that myself and John and Connor had, you know, an audience and had a vibe, and that was something that, you know, should be on the national broadcaster. So we were blessed. We really were. I mean, we were really lucky in the fact that we got chosen to sort of present those shows and to have the opportunity to sort of share that music and to continue the legacy of what we had been doing on Pulse, because, you know, everybody was looking for the gig on 2FM. You know, don't be fooled. Everybody wanted to go there. That was the golden egg in terms of broadcasting. And for me, I was like, I don't want to work anywhere else but RTE. So we were all, you know, blessed and extremely grateful to have that opportunity. And nothing like that will ever happen again. You know, it was that sort of that time when it was just at such a peak that we had all of these UK promoters coming in. You know, the Point was stuffed every couple of months with
spring parties,
with
winter
spring
parties,
party,
Gatecrasher,
Creamfields. I'm sure there's a bunch of other ones, you know. And then everything else that was happening, like Planet Love and everything else around the country. So,
and you were at the epicentre of it all.
Yeah.
Because it was such an important time, and I've spoken about this to people, like doing a dance music radio show myself, been like doing my Saturday selection for nearly 12 years now. And it's not as important anymore as it was back in that era, I feel. Whilst it is still important, obviously, to be playing that music on the airwaves and, you know, for the people who are into it. But back then, it was the only means you had as such of hearing fresh new underground dance music, because the internet, nobody really had broadband. And I remember if you wanted to like listen to BBC Radio 1, I'm not sure if there was some kind of limitations in terms of being in Ireland at the time, if you could listen live, and even like downloading tracks and stuff or downloading sets was unheard of, because like I said, not many people had broadband.
Yeah.
So it was the way to get new music. If you were into dance music, you read The Star on a Friday, you read Mark Kavanagh's Club Mix, and you listened to John Power on a Friday night, and yourselves then 6 to 6, you know, on the Saturday. And that was just it for people. And then of course going out to the clubs as well. You know, it was like a youth movement. Like, you know, they talk about in the 90s people going to raves and meeting at petrol stations for directions and stuff like that. It wasn't much different than that in a way, because, you know, you'd have people ringing each other the next day going, did you hear that new whatever track on such and such a label that McCabe played last night or the Power played last night?
Yeah.
And it was the thing people talked about.
Yeah.
Whereas now we're so awash with new music.
Well, you
and
get it like that. Like,
it's so accessible.
You Shazam it and you've got it. Like,
exactly.
So and people forget that was kind of like, that was 15 years ago. It's not that long ago, really, in the scheme of things, you know. And I mean, 2000 to 2005 was kind of when, I mean, the iPhone's 10 years old. So 2008 is when the iPhone came out. And when the iPhone first came out, it didn't even have 3G. You know, it was still on GPRS.
And there was a lot of like issues with people trying to unlock them over here, because remember they only worked on American networks. I know people had like sideline businesses doing it. Yeah. You know?
So that was like, when you take that window between 1999 and 2008, say, you know, radio was kind of still in its peak, in the sense that there wasn't really anywhere else to sort of get that shared experience in that way, you know.
That's so true. In comparison to your RTE peers, the likes of Timmy and Power, I can really only speak from personal experience on this because of like the amount of time I spent in Camole and in Club Space, because that was kind of like my introduction to that world. But I remember seeing your name on like lineups in Dublin, but you weren't as busy around the country. Would you put that down to you maybe not playing as the music that was as hard as them, or do you think it was the Maniac effect that maybe kind of might have affected bookings for more, I don't want to say underground, because it was banging trance and hard house.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But at the time, that was kind of underground in comparison to what was popular.
Yeah.
So do you think that maybe the whole Maniac effect, that was a bit of a knock-on, or were you just more at home in the likes of Mono and stuff, playing house music?
I was always at home in Mono, because I used to live there after the show. I used to go straight in there, and that's where we'd all hang out. You know, we had the run of the place, so it was great. I'd get a Eddie Rockets after the radio show and a copy of Sunday World, and head into Mono and sit upstairs and eat that, and then sit there for the night drinking and listening to Connor and Raymond Franklin and people play tunes, or whoever the guests were. I was always the one that saw the opportunity to commercialise things. I think I always wasn't really a big drug taker, wasn't really into that scene in that way. So I saw the way to sort of connect that scene to the commercial world, and to sort of make it bigger. And that's why the show that I did was very much commercially orientated. It was 6 to 8. It was the biggest tunes. It was the tunes that were crossing into the charts, and so on. But on the flip side of that, I was doing gigs and I was going out and I was playing tribal house in some places, and the people were just like, play Maniac.
Yeah, okay.
So I was kind of a bit all over that place. I still am, in that sense. Like, I haven't really found a real kind of straight road and flow, and that's me and that's what I do. I'm still all over the place trying to do loads of different things with loads of different kind of genres and styles. So I wouldn't have the credibility that Springer had, or that John had, or even that Connor had, because Connor was a house DJ. Timmy played hard house, John played techno and hard house, and that's what they did. And they got booked for the clubs that were predominantly people there taking drugs, having a good time. Whereas I was the guy who would release that cheesy, awful dance record that nobody wants to know about. But he who laughs last.
And here we are. Who is touring in Dubai, Australia, Vegas? We'll come back to that. But speaking of the M word, I'm afraid we're going to have to go there.
Go.
A quick history lesson, right? Correct me if I'm wrong at any stage. So the original Michael Sembello, Maniac,
Yes.
the movie Flashdance.
Yes.
There's a fantastic YouTube comment under a live performance of that. I'm going to read it to you, right?
Oh, wow.
I actually saw it this morning. In the video, it's him playing it live. He's got a black wife beater on, right? And he's playing keyboard. There's a guy with a keytar there, right? You remember the keytars? It was like a keyboard just strapped down and played it like a guitar.
Okay, yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So which version was this?
It's the original version, right?
Michael Sembello version?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah. I'll show it to you in a minute. I'll show it to you later. But there's a fantastic YouTube quote, and it basically says, "This dude looks like he was working on a car. Now he's on his lunch break, so he decides to come by this club and sing a song before going back to work."
Oh, wow. Okay.
It is amazing, right?
I thought it was your one doing the run on the spot dance.
I know, well, like, that's from the movie Flashdance, but there
okay.
is a live performance
Oh,
of it
wow.
by your man that's
Oh,
going
wow.
around.
Okay.
So it was covered in '94 by Irish outfit 4Rhythm.
That's right.
Co-produced by Tim Hannigan, the aforementioned Mr. Spring.
Yep.
He later remixed it with Mark Kavanagh under the SoundCloud moniker. That version of the track became a cult classic on the Dublin club scene. Various live raps added by the likes of DJ Wicked, Mick Lynn and Al Gibbs. Am I right so far?
That's correct. So 4Rhythm have a version which is up online, and they had a different rap. I think they had a problem with, I don't know what happened actually, because when I think of one of the words, got to bake like a cake in an oven. You know when you do love it. And they put it out as 4Rhythm, and they followed it up with a track called Fraggle Rock. And then on that release, there was a 12-inch version, which was the SoundCloud version, which was Mark Cameron and Tim Hannigan.
Mm-hmm.
They put that together. So that 12-inch version was being rapped on by Mick Lynn, Al Gibbs, DJ Wicked, and probably every other DJ that's ever said that they did it first.
Where do you fit into this then? Because I assume you used to perform it live like the other lads. And did everyone have their own version, or was there like an unofficial lyric sheet that everybody added to? And
Al Gibbs did the version that is known to this day. And what happened was, he used to play in the likes of Hollywood Nights, which was in the Slogan Park Hotel. He was doing a slightly different angle in terms of where he was going. He was doing the Monday Night Selection or something like that, which was a very upfront club show. So his angle was cool, credible dance music. We started to run gigs in the likes of the Temple Theatre, Temple Bar, places like that. And I was asked to do the main room, whereas Al would do the crypt.
Mm-hmm.
So he would play to a lot of Mad Outfits downstairs.
What an amazing room, by the way.
Yeah, yeah. And I would play upstairs and play the more commercial type of stuff, like DJ Quicksilver, Bellissima, DJ Sackett and Friends, you know, all that kind of Love Struck, that type of stuff.
What night of the week are we talking around? What year as well?
Mostly under 18s,
Okay.
between 96 and 99.
Okay.
So Al had his version, which every time I was at one of the Pulse gigs, I would have heard. So I knew it in a way, but didn't know it entirely. And when I got asked to do the main room, people were expecting that Maniac would be done. So it so happened on one of the nights in the Temple Theatre, we were doing a live broadcast. We recorded it, and we recorded that version that night. So it was just like a random sort of accident that it became that thing. Because it was just a version which as such was ad-libbed to a certain extent, because there were bits that I was putting in that Al didn't put in. There was bits that John Power used to put in, and all of this kind of came together in this one version that got recorded and then started to get requested and got played on Pulse. And that's the version that sort of appeared as the version that everybody knew.
So was that the version that kind of inspired Four Rhythm member Simon Fitzpatrick to approach Timmy about doing a new version in '99?
No, that was Billy. Abby did that.
Okay, so it was Billy.
So Billy said, look, I'm getting asked for this all the time. So do you want to put it out? So we went, okay. And that's the rest is history, as they say. So Tim and Simon went back. They produced the new instrumental.
Mm-hmm.
So I took the instrumental that they had produced, brought it out to the cricket club in Clontarf, which was an under-18s gig, set up a few mics, recorded it. It was a total disaster. Everything distorted because the kids were so loud. Like, we went in there going, you're going to have to make a bit of noise. We're recording this. This is going to be, you're going to be famous and all this. And they blew the place apart. It was just a small room with about 700 people in it, and it was just crazy.
How did you manage to save it for the recording then if it was blown out?
We actually, if you listen really closely, you'll hear that there's actually two vocals. So if you listen to it with headphones on and without the MP3 sort of compression on it, I had to go into a studio then and then re-add the vocal on top of it, overdub it. And then we added bits more of crowd. It was mastered, and then I mastered it and made an absolute balls of it. The bass is in mono, the rest of it's in stereo. It's just it's everything that shouldn't work. And it did.
I can see why you have such a love-hate kind of relationship with it in many ways. So that kind of explains how you were the one that ended up on the recorded version, because by chance you were on the version that was played on Pulse, thus that was being requested on Pulse and then being requested in Abbey Discs with Billy.
Yeah.
Was there any animosity from the other lads who were doing it at the time because that you were the one who ended up on it, on the recorded released version?
No, because I rang Al. Because Pulse had disbanded at this point and everybody was off. I think Al was off doing something else anyway. So I rang him and I said, look, Billy's approached me and he's asked me, will you do a release? And from Al's point of view, he was kind of focused on doing his thing, which, it worked for both of us in that sense. I mean, the animosity that followed afterwards from everybody else that wrote the rap and we apparently robbed it from, I don't know, if Al robbed it from somebody else, but I'm pretty sure he didn't. Because I was there all those years whilst he was the only one that was doing it. And, he was the one we were all looking up to and he killed it. But he just grew out of it, I think. And I kind of just fell into it and grew into it. And like I say, it was a combination of, the bits he wasn't doing the Oggy bit.
Yeah, I was just about to ask that. I heard that was your main contribution from your time in the Scouts, I believe.
Yeah. And the Rocket. It could have actually been John that did the Oggy bit, because we were both in Wesley at the time doing the Wes on a Friday night.
Yeah.
And it's possible, I have a vague recollection of maybe John might have done it there, but it was just a thing that we all did, and it was just like,
it's just a call and response type thing,
Yeah.
And it just works.
Yeah.
It's still in the top 5 selling Irish singles of all time.
Yep.
So it's fair to say ye all did all right out of it in some shape or form.
Well,
some more than others, I would imagine.
You'd be surprised.
I remember being told though your share of it mostly went on a Pro Tools studio at the time. Is that true?
Yeah, I got a bridging loan. I went straight out and bought a load of gear.
And I'm assuming that kind of rig is the type of thing now that you would be hard set to run one modern day VST on at this stage.
Yeah, oh man, I bought a Pro Tools rig like 5 years ago for 16 grand, and you can buy it on adverts now for like 300 quid.
Oh.
So it's like, I mean, that's just part and parcel of studios, because I spent a lot of money on studios, and that was kind of my real passion, was having a studio. And I ran it for a while in a place called the Factory on Barrow Street, which was the room that they recorded Zeropa in, and the Cranberries recorded in, and the Frames recorded in. It was a really good room, and I had a really nice desk. And then that shut down, and I moved it all down to a house in Wicklow and bought a vintage Neve console, the only one in the country, and had this great idea of setting up this really nice vintage studio because I'd been restoring all this gear. And then the economy crashed.
Ouch.
And then it was like, okay. And then RTE came knocking and said, hey, would you like a full-time pensionable job?
Yes, sir.
And I went, yeah.
What happened with the international negotiations to license Maniac overseas? I believe they broke down in mid-2000. What's the story? Would it have worked outside of Ireland, do you think?
I don't know. In they've got the same kind of mindset as us. You know, if you remember back to Ultrasonic and
Yeah.
all of that kind of stuff, like they were into that, we were into that. So it would have worked at the time. It was referred to as that it'll be really big in the ritzy clubs up north. That's what they were saying. That's what they thought. So what happened? Look, I speak to Billy. I spoke to him 2-3 weeks ago. So
How is Billy?
He's great. Yeah, he's great.
Is he enjoying life
Yeah.
post records?
Yeah, I think he is. Yeah, he plays golf, and I think he still sets himself up in the odd record fair because he just loves that. He loves that business, and I don't think he ever really wanted to get out of it, but unfortunately that's the way it went. But I mean, we had a big falling out. So when I say I got a bridging loan for a studio, I bought a load of gear and was expecting a big check, and that big check didn't come because it was like everybody lost their minds because we had all of these people coming at us going, this is going to be massive. If you remember Oxide and Neutrino,
Yeah, of course.
Casualty song,
Mm-hmm.
that was out around the same time. And it was the first time that it was kind of like bedroom producers stroke bedroom DJs had managed to break through into the mainstream charts, because before that most of the stuff would be recorded in a big recording studio with a big producer. So there was the other track, White Something, it had a white cover with green thing on it, and it was this guy made it in his bedroom, same thing again. It was a massive hit, and they were all going, this is the next big thing. So we had all of these people approaching us from the UK saying that they wanted to license it. So picture this: you're in a big, East-West, which was a big label in the UK and London, and you're ringing Abbey Discs, and you ring, hello.
Tara answers the
Hi,
phone.
this is such and such from East West Records. We're looking for Billy Murray if he's there, please. Hang on a sec, Billy, Billy, phone. And then Billy fumbles on the phone. Hello. That's what they were dealing with. And he was completely caught off guard for what was being thrown at him. I mean, we sat at a table in a coffee shop opposite Abbey Discs, myself and Billy, and it was somebody from East West, and there was a bidding war going on at the time between East West and somebody else. I can't remember what the other label was. And they said, we will write you a check right now for 130,000 sterling. That was a lot of money. It is a lot of money regardless, but back then that was even more money because sterling was really worth something.
Yeah.
I think it was almost double what the pounds at the time or whatever it was at the time. And we just weren't prepared for it. And Billy wasn't prepared for it. And I think we all just got completely lost, and contracts started to arrive from solicitors in London. Sign this, can't pay you till you do. Me going, what? Like,
How old are you at this stage?
21. And then, on top of that, the golden age of like Westlife. This track stops Westlife from getting 6 consecutive number ones. And here's me without any management, without any, label, without anything.
Proper DIY.
Yeah, total DIY. And we all just lost our minds and completely blew it, I suppose.
But how does that happen? How do you come to blow it when you've like people knocking down your door with fat checks?
Because I think they got pissed off that they weren't getting the kind of responses they would expect from Billy, because he simply just did not know how to handle it.
Okay.
They were ringing the shop and they were getting him when he was there. There was no, they got on a plane and they flew over to try and do the deal, and they couldn't do the deal. I think they just, at the end of it, they went, you know what? This is just too messy.
That's mad. Because, from an outsider looking in, you would imagine it was just a signature on a piece of paper and the masters that were
thanks
needed.
very much. Yeah.
You know?
But, look, strange things, where there's a hit, there is a writ. That is the way it goes. There's always going to be people who will come out of the woodwork when a song is successful. I'm not just saying it about this. It just happens.
Yeah.
Somebody who was in the room next door and said, it'd be great there if you did that. Then suddenly they want 20-30% of the publishing on it.
Well, you see that on songwriting credits nowadays. You know what I mean? Like, you only have to look at some of the world's biggest artists, and there's like 15 people on the credits because somebody might have coughed in the background, and it's on the track. Yeah. Was life a little Spinal Tap-esque back then? I remember being in the Beacon in Courtown one night, and I was there just on a night out. I don't think even it was an official PA by yourself. Maybe you just happened to be in the building and somebody handed you a mic. But I remember you doing it live, and I remember the mob that ensued post-performance around you. Remember, like, that? Oh man, I'm getting flashbacks now of the Beacon and how cool it used to be in that vibrating dance floor and stuff.
It used to be roller rink.
Oh.
So the floor was on springs.
Okay, I never knew that.
So you'd walk in, as soon as you walked onto it, because everybody was moving, you would start to move.
Bless your Wexford heritage and knowledge,
go.
sir. But I remember that time, and like, did that happen a lot? Was that something you would have been booked for, or was it just times that you were out and you were like, hey, I fancy a bit of adulation, give me that mic?
I would have spent a lot of time in Castletown, hence why we had the radio station there. So the Beacon was kind of a club close to my heart. So I got booked there twice, I think. And the second time, it unfortunately went horribly wrong because I was in the bar and I had 6 friends with me. And we walked from the bar into the club. And the guy who owned it at the time didn't take very kindly to the fact that I had walked through the kitchen. And why was I bringing 5 people with me and they can go out that way and pay to come in the front door?
Oh, wow.
Now, this was to do a gig for, not very much money, simply because I was in the area.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of cool, would love to. I'll come down, no problem.
I thought you were going to tell me you were with 6 friends and you just got pissed in the bar and it just went arseways.
No, and then my car was in the back gate and he locked the car in the back and he wouldn't let me get it out and it turned really nasty, unfortunately. But it closed down like 6 months later. So
that's mad.
Whatever happened. It was a great club, but I think somebody took it over. They made a balls of it. They made an absolute balls of it because he just had this attitude of, this is my club and I do what I want to do with it.
King of my castle, so to speak.
Yeah.
I've met your 2 little boys. Are they aware of how much of a legacy their dad has left on Irish music? I know they're still quite young, but when they do come of age, how will you explain that to them, or would you let them find out for themselves?
I know they know. Like, they know that, I mean, for them, it's like in school, my dad's got like 200 million streams. And none of them are from Maniac, by the way. So that's kind of, that's how they sort of
quantify it.
They quantify it, yeah. But they also, I mean, they came to the Beat in the Street last summer. That was the first live gig that they had come to, which was really great to see. So one of them was a bit scared because it was very noisy and loud, but Josh, who's a little bit older, he kind of gets it. And he's just me. He's into music, plays piano. And I would imagine that's probably somewhere where he will go.
Also, that evening, your missus, I met her, and she dropped a little interesting tidbit that, like myself, you suffer from an affliction of an addiction to shoes.
Oh, yeah.
What are the origins of that with you?
I don't know. I just always liked runners. But the problem is, I used to buy loads of runners and only wear like 2 pairs of them, and the rest of them would just sit there because I'd think that they looked great, but I'd put them on and be like, they look great, but they don't look great in me.
Yeah, I've had pairs like that. I remember a pair of Filas I had in my teenage years that were like that. Can you remember like what the start of it was? As in, like, what was the first pair of shoes you kind of coveted to an extent?
Probably pumps.
Okay.
Reebok pumps with the orange pump up on the...
And they made the tennis edition ones as well that look like a tennis ball.
Yeah. Look, you are hardcore now in terms of trainers. Me, at this point now, I'm just like, right, well, I know that if I want something that no one else has got, I use an app called Goat. The odd time
and
I'll
you
ship
pay through the nose for that, man. You madman.
Yeah, but you get stuff that other people won't have. And for me, at the moment, it's just NMDs.
Yeah.
They work, they fit, they're comfortable, they suit my jeans.
How many pairs do you have?
At this moment in time, probably not that big, 12.
Oh, really? yeah. Your missus told me that you give away loads.
I do, yeah.
To her brother or something, is that right?
Yeah,
our nephew.
Yeah.
But something else that we've got in common as well is our taste in suitcases.
Oh yeah,
which quite surprised me.
Oh well.
Remember when I bought that aluminium thing? Actually, do you know how to pronounce the brand?
Rimowa.
Okay. When I started buying them, I got the smaller one, and I used to call it Rimowa, right? Okay. Then it was Rimowa. I thought, we're actually saying it wrong. It's Rimowa.
Okay.
Because it's German. The W was a V.
Rimowa.
But yeah, I was actually quite shocked in that, because I remember seeing you replied to the story when I got it. To explain to people listening, we own these really ridiculously, stupidly kind of expensive suitcases. That yours is like the black aluminium titanium
stealth,
thing, the stealth one. I have the normal pauper steel titanium one. Looks like something of a James Bond movie that you're carrying a bomb in. Yeah. But you also, like me, got the one with the screen on it.
Yeah, but that's another one actually.
Oh, okay,
that's a different one. Yeah,
how many?
Unfortunately, I don't know whether you told me this, but they've discontinued that.
Yeah, they've discontinued because people just
didn't buy into it.
Yeah, and I think the whole idea of it was that you could, instead of going to the airport and getting a sticker that has the barcode for your flight on it, you'd be able to transfer the barcode from an app on your phone. That's right. So it would be on the screen. But there wasn't enough airlines that picked up on it.
Super cool idea.
So cool, like living in the future type stuff. But, you know, As Michael J. Fox said, they're just not ready right now, but their kids are going to love it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's one of those things. It's so cool.
I have a saying which is buy cheap, buy twice. And it's been proved time and time and time again. And if you go and you spend a stupid amount of money on a suitcase like that, and we do a fair amount of travel, so I can justify it, but I know that like if the wheel falls off, I can buy a new wheel. If the handle falls off, I can buy a new handle. And I'm all about that. Like my Philips Sonicare toothbrush stopped working. So, I'm on Google, Philips Sonicare toothbrush week, and sure enough, there's loads of videos, and it's just one little screw, open it up, tighten it up, and it's fixed. It's done. Now, there's stupid money to buy with, and you shouldn't have to, take it apart and fix it for yourself. But I'll have that toothbrush for years. That's how I justify it anyway.
Moving on from our strange addictions and the world of Maniac, a deal with Universal was inked, and Love Is in the Air followed in 2001.
God.
Now, this tune, it seems, has been scrubbed from existence. The sleeve appears in a tiny JPEG on Discogs. Could not find the audio for diamonds. I could not find it. Did you play any part in it being scrubbed from the internet, might I ask?
Jesus, I wish I could completely remove it from...
I'm trying to remember. Was that like a proper cover of Love Is in the Air?
Yeah, yeah, full on. The one. And what happened was certain people were away in Ibiza.
Okay.
And there was Milk Inc. had done a version of it. And it worked brilliantly, as it would on a terrace in Ibiza when you're off your face.
Mm-hmm.
So Tico here says, that'd be a great idea. I'm going to do that. Unfortunately, I wasn't producing at the time. I knew live sound. I knew how to do live sound, but I didn't know how to do, music production. And I'd only just bought a bit of gear, and I was starting to learn. So that was the problem. Have a hit record and then be expected to produce a follow-up. So I was teamed up with other people, and we went in and we recorded a version of it. And just the production was pretty lame, and the whole thing was a bit lame, but it did well. It went top 10.
Failed to replicate the success of Maniac, though.
Of course.
Was it a hard time kind of for you, mentally, kind of coming off that huge wave that you'd had?
I don't know. I never really thought about that, actually. I knew that it would take me, and I said it at the time, I said, it's going to take me 10 years to get away from this track. And I was wrong. Like 15, 18 years later, here we are. And I'm still not away from it. So I knew that it was as big as that it was like one hit wonder territory. And you're really going to have to struggle if you want to try and do anything in terms of, credible music or, production. You're really going to struggle to do this. And at the time, I didn't know how to do it. That was the biggest problem. So that's where I kind of went, you know what? This isn't for me. Something
you did know how to do, though, was Tribal House. Because yourself and Jay Sisko had that thing on Twisted as Digi-Tribe.
Yeah.
Now, Twisted was amazing back then because, like, Super Chumbo, Danny Tenaglia, like absolute gods of house music. And you even remixed Super Chumbo, am I right?
Yeah.
How did that signing come about to Twisted? How did that happen?
I had bought, I'll put it down to a drum machine. I bought a drum machine, and it had this really nice sub noise, which I delayed, and it became the basis of this track Over, which was sent by Cisco to Tom Stefan, and he was playing in Ministry, and Ministry's PA, their sound system was, at the time and still is, like, phenomenal, like world class, and this track in that room through that PA just blew his mind apart.
Now, what year was this? This was very early noughties.
Yeah, 2000.
How did he send it to him? Was it by post or what?
Yeah.
No, he gave
it to him. Maybe he was over for a...
He gave it to him in the kitchen.
Okay.
So
he was playing, and the following night he went to Ministry.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So there you go.
Proper old school, kind of hand-delivered tracks, and then you ended up on one of the most important house music labels of all time.
Yeah.
Which
was really cool. Because everybody was like, that McCabe Muppet in his Maniac track. And that track, I mean, Cisco was great for, he doesn't have technical skill. So that track was very much, my doing in that sense. I mean, he certainly was there and involved at the time. in shaping the sound, but it was I constructed it from the ground up, and it was kind of one of the first things that I really had done that I was kind of proud of from a production point of view.
In more recent years, how the hell did you become involved in Eurovision? Well, I'm dragging out all the skeletons
You
here.
really are, aren't you? My first was I twice. Yeah, I was twice involved with Eurovision. Once was I was asked to be a mentor.
Mm-hmm.
So I went off and I kind of, for anybody who isn't in Ireland, Eurovision is seen as something completely different. Like, it's really well regarded in other countries. Like,
Whereas over here, it's that thing we were
that thing
fucking deadly at in the 90s, and
but
now we're
it's crap.
and we don't really want it because we
No.
can't afford it.
Exactly. So I was approached to be a mentor, and I had the girl called Amy Fitzpatrick, and we wrote a song, and I produced it, and we lost the track because the people who wrote it originally didn't want it used. This was 2 days before we were due to submit it, so we had to go back into the studio, find another track, re-record it, and get it done. We went on the Late Late Show. We won the judges' vote or the audience vote. I can't remember. We lost the other one. We came second in the other one. I think we lost the public vote.
That was the year the song that won it went on to go last in the overall competition.
Yeah, I think it got like 1 point or something.
5
like that,
points.
so.
Checked it out earlier.
But yeah, but like Eurovision, especially in this country, up until last year, has been a very closed circle, and it was the same people doing the same thing over and over again. And I think that like the song we had wasn't bad. Amy was a bit young; she turned 18 on the day that we performed it. But look, it wasn't to be. And then it was a good experience. It was good to be involved in it. And then last year, I was approached just to produce it because they had the track. They had Ryan, who took a big gamble by sort of putting himself into it because of the stigma that it has. But the track was just a little bit too sort of downbeat and slow for what would be a stadium performance. So I kind of rejigged it, changed the tempo, and just produced it into what it was, and we did okay.
Is it something you could see yourself revisiting maybe down the line, or have you kind of had your fill of it?
Eurovision?
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't know. I think I've had my fill of it, yeah.
Is it as mad over there as people make
I
out?
didn't go.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I didn't go. Maybe if I'd gone, I'd be a bit more enthusiastic about it, but I kind of produced it and left it and let them go off, and it gets sucked into the Eurovision machine. Eurovision Ireland has a staffing.
Okay.
There are people.
Is it government funded by any chance?
Well, it's public service. So,
Wow.
yeah, it's license fee funded.
That's a handy number.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
Well,
I don't know.
I'm going to send them a CV.
It still is a really good opportunity for somebody. I don't know who's going to try and take it on this year. They've got the two double whammy. Like, one, it's going over to a part of the world that people don't want to go to for various reasons and don't want to be seen to be supporting it because it's there. And two, if you go into Eurovision, you've got to go into it ignoring whatever happens here and just going, I've got a plan, I've got 4 tracks or 5 tracks or an album, and I'm just going to go and work Europe. And I'm going to try and make a name for myself in Europe, because you can.
Do you think there's any merit in taking the Swedish approach like years ago when they sent ABBA? If we were to send somebody like Picture This, or somebody with a kind of, a following or chops that have been proven.
But we should. Because even if we didn't win, you can't, the guys are good. Their songs are good. So if it doesn't win, it doesn't win. It's still a massive platform for people to get the exposure on.
It's just that there's a bit of a stigma kind of attached to it.
Stigma to it, yeah. And that's, I don't know. That's the problem they have now is trying to find somebody who's kind of credible in that sense, that has the skill to be able to carry it off on such a big stage. Because it's not an easy performance. It's a very, very big arena. You're in there with a lot of people, a lot of glitz, a lot of glam, a lot more budget, and they want it. There's some countries there that really want to win it, and they take it really seriously.
And it's gone so political as well with all the Eastern Bloc countries, a lot of it as well.
I don't know. I don't think so.
No?
No, I don't think that really plays a part anymore. I think if the song's good, the song's good.
It transcends
It
it.
transcends it, yeah. It gets past that.
Music transcends all.
Yeah,
How
exactly.
philosophical. You've experienced somewhat of a rebirth. You had the success of Maniac, then the kind of the dip after, the Tribal House period. But you're smashing out tracks that are doing the business. 18 million YouTube plays last year, 31 million Spotify streams, and 3 million fans. You're doing all right.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of funny, and none of it's to do with Maniac.
Yeah.
That's kind of the good thing.
Is that very satisfying?
It is, yeah, because I always like I'm in the process of having a tattoo lasered off my arm.
Oh, okay, go on.
Because I got the barcode from Maniac tattooed on my arm.
I kind of
years
like the
ago,
idea
'cause
of that, though.
Yeah, it was like, this has defined me. And then when I kind of got back into it again, and started producing again, because I'm only really producing again 3 years. I kind of made the decision that I didn't want it to define me, and I got really lucky with the remix for Gav, for Nervous. Like, that's just phenomenal numbers. So I mean, as my first outing beyond Maniac, back on the scene, to do those kind of numbers, 150 million streams is like, okay.
And plus, you've got the benefit with like Irish expats around the world are open to you because of the Maniac association, but will still be, on board with what you're playing these days in a nightclub. Kind of maybe sometimes on the pretense that you will do Maniac at some stage, or something might occur along those lines, be it an up-to-date remix of it or whatever.
Yeah.
But like Australia, Dubai, you were in Vegas for the McGregor fight. What have the reactions been like? Is it still as wild over there as it is at home when expats kind of hear it?
Oh yeah. Yeah, especially. Like, I mean, the McGregor thing was the Irish on tour. There were a few, people that were living there now, and they were grateful to see me, but that was more Irish people on tour that were there for the McGregor fight. So I think that they kind of had lived the rebirth at home, but Australia was just mental.
Really?
Mental.
Because you'd have so many people who would have moved over there during the crash.
At
and just,
that age.
Yeah.
And it was just Paddy's Day as well, and it was just insane. And then same with Dubai, really the same kind of thing. But the funny thing about Dubai was that there were quite a lot of non-Irish there that didn't really understand what was going on. But
Flashdance fans.
Yeah, no, this guy came up to me, and I think he was Indian, and he was like, "I have no idea who you are, but this is fucking amazing."
Fantastic. I actually had a conversation with somebody lately, and we were talking about tracks that no matter where you are in the world in a nightclub, they will wreck the place, right? So for the Irish in there, that is definitely, Maniac 2000 is definitely one of those. But like, it joins the likes of, say, House of Pain's Jump Around, which also has an Irish tinge to it. The Fratelli's Chelsea Dagger is another kind of club wrecker. And again, they're Scottish. The other two kind of are Irish tinge. So yeah, I think, people talk about the kind of Celtic nature of music and just how rousing it can be. But Maniac is definitely on that list.
Yeah.
I'd love to see it played somewhere in a club where there are no Irish people. See would it get much of a reaction. You should do that as a scientific test. Maybe go on holiday and slip a DJ a tenner in like Mumbai.
I don't think I'm going to find out anytime soon, because I don't think it's it's not up for re-release.
You mentioned to me once before about the benefit of alternate seasons around the world, because it's now summertime in Australia, and you told me you were focusing on stuff over there.
Yeah.
What's going on at the minute?
We missed the boat.
Oh, okay.
For this year. It's just not right. It's really important to get it right, and I just felt that it's not right, and the team feel it's not right as well. So rather than go out and make a half-arsed effort, we just decided to hold back. So, but I've another track coming out now with Sights.
Okay.
I've worked on a track with them, so that's coming out end of April, I think, 2019. And then another one pretty quick after that that's ready to go, and then that one that should have gone for this Australian summer/winter will probably go for next year.
You mentioned the Gavin remix, Gavin James of Nervous, wasn't it?
Yep.
And also your remix of the Sunset Brothers. Were they remixes that you were solicited to do, or did you do them off your own back and then present them to the artist and be like, hey, look, I've done this, what do you think? Blah, blah, blah. How did it work?
So I know Gavin for years, because he posted a Daft Punk cover years ago, and I saw it, and I just thought it was amazing, really, really good. And he came I was doing Weekend Breakfast on 2FM at the time, so he hadn't really been doing any kind of promo or anything like that. He wasn't signed, or nobody really knew of him. So he came in and he did the track for me live on the radio, and then I would know his manager Edison really well, just from years, because I had written with Laura Eisebor, who he used to work for. And he just said, hey, look, would you be into trying to give this a turn? And I did, and that was it. And then the Sunset Brothers, I had worked a version which was a little bit more commercial, because I saw the potential in that track. and we just it was a label decision to sort of team the two of us up, and for them to sort of benefit off whatever audience that I would have already had here.
How on earth have they not been sued by Nayland and Kane for how much it sounds like beach ball?
It's all cleared.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
So it's all above board.
I was wondering, because every time I hear them,
Sure.
just going like, how are those lads not getting pulled by the ear into
No, you can do anything. I mean, you can re-record any track you want and put it out under your name. You just need to go and ask for permission. And if they give you permission, then it's fair game.
Your track Over Me was a huge smash last year as well. Radio up and down the country. What's the writing process for something like that? Because this often kind of baffles me in all my years of like playing around producing dance tracks. I've never done anything with a vocal as such. Does the track come first and then you will write the vocals to it? Or is it slightly in reverse? Because I would imagine it must be an awful pain in the arse to try and write a dance track around pre-written vocals. And how much control do you retain in that, or do you leave it to the singers?
It can work, but it works both ways. Over Me, in particular, was actually, he had written it as an R&B song, which just didn't have the, when I heard it, I was like, this is more than what I'm hearing. So I kind of had a different sort of idea for it than he had originally. So I pulled his vocal from, what was originally an R&B track and created the production that you would know today. But like the Sights track was written as an instrumental that we then approached, a vocal on top of that once the instrumental was written. So, but it can work either way. And a lot of the time people will produce, if you don't have a vocalist to hand, you just pull an a cappella from something that you really like and you kind of build the version around that and then pull the a cappella out and then have somebody sing something new or write a new melody for the top line.
Okay.
So, but it can work either way.
It's been a lesson, sir.
There you go.
The only way is up. Dream collaborations.
Oh, wow.
We'll say like dream collaborations, but also ones that you feel are within reach that you would like to work with.
There's a lot of like that. What I really like about Nervous is the fact that regardless of the production, it's a really beautiful song, and it has real depth and real meaning. And anybody who can write like that's a gift to be able to write at that level. And he has it in spades. Like every track he does is written from a place which is just so deep. It's really admirable. Whereas you can find like a Becky Hill or a Jonas Blue track or something like that. It's just pop music, and it's grand, but it'll pass and it'll date and it'll age. And as is proven with Nervous by the fact that like it's still doing 50,000 streams a day.
Wow.
When you get songs like that and singers and songwriters that can write on that level, your job is half done. It becomes really easy to sort of accompany what they've already done. Whereas if the vocal isn't as strong, then you're sort of moving more towards production being as important as the actual melody or the topic that's been sung about. So there's a lot of really, I'd love to work with Dermot Kennedy because he's got that.
Have you seen him live?
I haven't, no.
I was at the gig in Vicar Street a while back.
Crazy.
Phenomenal. Have my tickets for the Olympia already.
Yeah.
I saw him at a festival in Belgium summer last year, and at 3 or 4 o'clock in the day the place was full for him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, incredible voice.
Yeah.
And I love as well how he focuses not so much on wanting to be famous in Ireland. He's looking further afield. He's working with hip-hop producers.
Yeah.
He has an EP produced by Mike Dean, who is, of course, Kanye West's executive producer on all his albums. Mike Dean is the guy who discovered Travis Scott, who has blown up so much in recent years. He even got Kylie Jenner pregnant. That's the level you're talking to people he's working with. And I think he's just one massive hit away from exploding. Because there's so many people that I talk to about Dermot Kennedy and they're like, who? And then I play it to them and they might know Moments Past or they might know something else. But then you introduce it to them all and they'll come back a couple of weeks later and be going, like, Jesus Christ, I've just spent 150 quid on that limited edition album they released for Record Store Day, and they're obsessed with him.
Yeah.
It's one of those things. I just think he's one massive track away from a huge breakthrough.
He just needs to break America. If he did America, then he's up in hosier territory then, But that's the sometimes tragic outcome of the music industry is sometimes people like that, for whatever reason, it doesn't happen because they just weren't in the right place at the right time.
And he's got all the talent, he's got all the fans, because he's selling out shows worldwide. Like, he's on an American tour at the minute. That's gone insane. I think he needs to sing the hook on a hip hop track.
Yeah.
That's what I think needs to happen.
And that probably will.
Dermot Kennedy's management, call me. I have the path to riches.
Yeah. No, people are aware of the power of collaborations in that sense. And I mean, even in the dance music world, David Guetta's name is all over a load of pop tracks, and he's had nothing to do with them. But they know that, you know, he brings something to it, and they bring something to him. So it's a collaboration sort of world. That's how people work. So, but look, somebody like him, I would love to work with. But then I would love to do something with like somebody like Becky Hill. She's just got such a great vocal. I'm also a big fan of Ina Roslin, who's done a lot of stuff with Jax Jones, that type of stuff. I love pop music. I love dance pop music. So, you know, whatever. Things seem to just, you know, in a way, they kind of organically happen. For some reason, you'll be somewhere and you meet somebody, or you'll talk to somebody, or you'll have remixed something and that hasn't worked, but you met this person and they knew this person, and for some weird reason, things just happen. So I hope they do.
What does Mark McCabe listen to at home or in the car? Go on, you can give me the cheese fest. I listen to terribly cheesy stuff. I love Rod Stewart and Elton John, and I suppose they're not really cheesy, they're very much of their time and stuff like that, but I listen to some atrocious music.
Do you?
Yeah, man, terrible stuff.
I've stopped listening to music in that way, which I think is really bad for my musical health.
Well, I just kind of think of it as there's good music and there's bad music, and it's all defined by my opinion of what's good and bad, so, fuck everybody else.
I don't know, I'm spending quite a lot of time in the studio, so at the moment I end up listening to my own stuff.
Oh, you egomaniac.
Like, but not because you take it out of the studio to listen to it in the car, to see how it sounds and to get yourself out of that headspace in the studio. So that's part of the process, and I'm kind of doing a lot of that at the moment.
I spoke to, sorry, not to cut across you, I spoke to Maverick Sabre recently, and he does a fantastic thing in London. I saw him do it on Instagram last year, and I spoke to him about it. It's something that he would do with his third album whilst he was working on it, that he would go to the studio, cut a demo or whatever, and then sit on the back of a bus in London and drive through London and listen to the music and see if it soundtracked what was around him.
Yeah.
And you mentioned like the car radio test is a big thing.
Yeah. But it's just getting yourself out. I mean, the Nervous remix was done in a coffee shop. I did that upstairs in Starbucks, Stillorgan, right, on a laptop.
You were one of those laptop wankers in a Starbucks.
Yeah. But, you know, it was just being able to, and I actually, like, I've gone full circle again, because I thought, oh, well, you know, I can't really be doing this on a laptop if I want to do it properly. So, you know, I bought a big piece of studio furniture, and I've got really nice monitors, and I've got a Mac Pro with 16 cores and, you know, all of this. But now I'm going, actually, I just bought a laptop today because I want to do the same again. I want to get out of that space where I am all the time, because it's at home. I don't go off to a studio every day. So to be able to sort of go out into the real world and see people and see the world moving around you is a really different headspace to be in than if you're just in a room looking at a monitor. And it just means that things change all the time. I can go anywhere in the world at any time and I can make music now. That's the way technology has progressed, you know, which is phenomenal. I can go to the gym and I can sit, you know, in the coffee shop for 3 hours, go for a swim, and then come back and do some more.
Something that really blew my mind one time was I was running a gig and I had Timo Maas over, and I had to pick him up from the airport, and we were driving from the airport down to Waterford, and he pulled out his iPhone and he was smoking a joint in the car, because it was on his rider that you have to provide flowers for Timo. Right, that's how it's coded on his rider. Okay. And he told me so many times he's showing up for gigs at the airport and people are standing there with bunches of flowers for him, right? Wow. But he's sitting there and he's in his element, and he whips out the phone and he pulls out, I'm not sure if it was a Native Instruments app or whatever, but he basically started writing a bass line in front of me in the car. Yeah. And he was like, yeah, it's good. I like this vibe. I'm going to take this home. And obviously he uses a ghost producer. I've seen like his Slices episode where Timo sits in the background stoned out of his mind and just, you know, he creates the vibe that the music is made in and all this stuff. But he just sat there and made his bass line in front of me. And but
he'll take that phone then and he'll go back to that producer and he'll say, "Here, I'll have a listen to this." and it'll be him going dum 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 dum. You know, we get this vibe. That's what it's about.
Yeah.
It's about ideas. It's not about gear. It's all about ideas.
And then
that's taken me a long time to figure that out.
yeah.
So he's had the idea. So it doesn't matter that he's gone off and had a ghost producer do it.
Oh no, of course.
He had the idea.
And especially when it's somebody like Martin Buttrick, who he works with or worked with in the past, who is a musical genius, and you give them that little shred, that little thread that they will just pull, and then it will just, go crazy. He told me a great, fantastic story, bit of dance music trivia if you want it. Do you remember how important his remix of Azito the Bass was?
Yeah.
Doom's Night, right? That, obviously the womp, 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 that was complete accident, right? He more or less hated it. They made it as a piss take because it was the second remix they had offered to Azito the Bass. He hated the first one. And they basically wanted to say, fuck you, we're going to make the most because it wasn't really a club-friendly track unless you pitched it up to about +8, right? Yeah. But we're going to make the most non-accessible kind of sounding thing. We're going to do this and, just as an effort to stick a finger up at you. So they made the second mix and it was Doom's Night, and your man took it. And then it blew up and became a massive crossover hit. Remember, he was on so many compilations and he told me that he's still in legal battles trying to get money that he's owed to it.
Yep.
But the first remix that they turned in, that was refused. Do you know what it turned into?
No.
Do you remember Ubik?
Oh yeah.
Remember his track? Dun, 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 dun. That was it. That was the first Doom's Night remix that was turned in, and they just kept it and just put it back out. And massive success. Paul Oakenfold played it everywhere. It was signed to Perfecto. It was huge. And they did 3 versions. Not a lot of people know that. It was Ubik the Dance. There was also Ubik the Techno and Ubik the Breaks, but the others were only on the double pack promo. Complete DJ nerdgasm there now. Lastly, kind of ask this question of a lot of people, but it often interests me. If it all ended tomorrow, what's your proudest achievement? Would you stand by the Maniac thing because of the love-hate relationship, or is there something else in your past professional or personal life that you would consider?
My children are my greatest achievement, of course.
Of course, apart from,
my beautiful wife being able to...
apart from the family, come on, or professionally.
Look, I did it, in the grand scheme of things, I had a hit. And that's, like I said to you earlier, that's something that people will spend their entire lives trying to do and will never achieve it. And to have done that in whatever way, shape or form, once was amazing. I suppose what I'm most proud of now would be, in a nutshell, my Spotify page. Because that is ultimately the source for what I'm doing and the music I'm making or the music I'm producing. And I've been really lucky to work with like James Arthur, Gabriel Applin, quite a few different singer-songwriters. Jamie Lawson, who's good mates with Ed Sheeran. That would be personally, but I mean, nothing can. I've heard some crazy stories, from people over the years about what the track has meant to them. And the weirdest thing happened actually a while ago, where I was at a gig, and for years I had spoken about this guy, because I don't really remember it because it was that time, but I was asked to go out to this guy's house because this guy had had an accident and he was in a coma, and he woke up out of the coma, and the first thing he said was, "Can I listen to Maniac?" Right?
I shouldn't be laughing.
Okay, I know, it's crazy. He had gone to a nightclub, been in a car accident on the way home, and for whatever reason, his last memory was Maniac, and he wanted to hear this when he came out of the coma. So somebody knew somebody who knew somebody who knew me, so they said, would you mind calling out to him and just saying hi? And I remember going out to the house, and this guy was in a downstairs living room, where they had put a bed, and he was in bits. He was proper smashed up. And I always remember going, that's mad that this guy, woke up out of a coma and the first thing he wants to do was hear that track. And that kind of just sums it up to me. But I was in a club there recently, and somebody approached me and they said, "Oh, you went to see my friend." And we connected it. And it was that guy who had whatever, and I don't know where he is or what he's doing now or whatever, but it was just like, I've seen people with tattoos. People have gone and got tattoos that say Maniac, or I'm, Maniac on the dance floor, or the lyrics from the track. It's like the conflict I have is that music is supposed to be about emotion. It's supposed to be about Radiohead, Gavin James, or beautiful symphonic strings in a trance track. It touches people in a way that we don't really understand. It's bigger than religion.
It's subliminal.
It's subliminal, subconscious. It's all of that. It's universal. And to have been involved with something that, for whatever reason, is a bunch of sound waves that is perceived by people in the way that it's perceived, and the joy that it brings to people, that's like a massive achievement in whatever way, shape or form. It could be a knock on the door that you recorded like this. If the world wants to love it, let them love it, So I guess ultimately it has to be Maniac. I suppose. As much as I love it and hate it.